So, 31st of August this year, we are back at Twickenham Stadium to celebrate Kyle Amor's testimonial year with the Rugby Football League. But more importantly, we're going to celebrate 20 years ago, that fateful evening when England won the Rugby World Cup in Australia. As we talked about last time, Kyle, yes, Johnny kicked the goal, but actually it was the forwards who did all the grunt in order to get him in that place. Let us not forget that. On the 31st of August, we're going to be joined by Sir Clive Woodward, who is kindly joining us to talk about 2003 and what happened there, but also give us his predictions on what is going to happen in France later this year. And fingers crossed, there's going to be certainly a home union win, maybe more Irish than English, perhaps. The other person that's going to join us is Alastair Hignell, who is a bit of a legend in his own lifetime, actually, in terms of his sporting prowess, and then how he went on to be perhaps even better known as a sports commentator, pundit, and summariser. Higgy, how you doing?
Very well, thanks, Paul. Yeah, looking good.
So Higgy's very kindly agreed to MC the event. He's pretty close with Clive and a lot of the guys from that 2003 era. So I suspect it will be a very, very interesting discussion with Clive on the day. Higgy, let's start by talking about your sporting career, because a bit like Kyle, you've done a bit in your time, haven't you?
Well, yeah, knocked about misspent youth, I think they call it. Yeah. Yeah, very lucky. I came from a sporting family. My dad was an international athlete, threw the javelin for Britain back in the 50s. And I grew up, he was my hero. I grew up watching him play sport. He was great at cricket. He played a bit of rugby, but his knees weren't that good. But he still did his javelin. And I remember growing up and just wanting to carry his bag and wanting to work the scoreboard and watch my dad play cricket. And he played reasonably good level cricket. And from that, I just thought, I want to be a cricketer. And then rugby came along, and one of his big mates was a guy called W.P.C. Davis, who was the centre in the 1955 Lions tour. Turned out he was my headmaster when I went away at the age of 7 or so. So this massive centre, W.P.C. Davis, had this great booming voice, and he was a marvellous teacher, but he just, believed in rugged and discipline and all that sort of stuff. But he loved sport, and so he encouraged the fact that I just wanted to play sport. I love football, but we played in a rugby school. We played rugby 2 terms and cricket the 3rd term, and I just wanted to play as much sport as I could. Fortunately, I had fantastic teachers who encouraged me, and nobody said, you can't do this. And my dad never said, you can't do that. He just said, if you want to try for it, try for it. And so I tried at the levels of England schools, rugby and cricket, and managed to get in each of those sides. And then by accident, I played first class rugby because I was supposed to be practicing to go to, before the cricket season started, joined the local club, Bristol, got in the first team, and I was going to go up to Cambridge after my cricket season. Cricket was my focus. I was going to go up to Cambridge. So I went. So I played a bit of cricket. I got into the Gloucestershire first team by the end of the season, more by luck than accident. Went up to Cambridge as a cricketer and as a scrum half, which was my position at schools. A bloke called Richard Harding, who went on to play for England, was at Cambridge. And so I thought, well, I'm going to play in the second team and wait for the cricket season. But unfortunately, a very good friend of mine called Ian Robertson, who was then the coach at Cambridge, he just said, oh, we haven't got a fullback. We've got a scrum half. We haven't got a fullback. We've got an outside half. We've got a centre. We've got a winger. He said, have you ever played fullback? I said, no, never. He said, well, you're playing against Cardiff on Saturday. And, within a year, I was playing for England, more by luck than judgment, because England weren't very good in those days. And suddenly I was playing 2 sports and trying to be a student as well. It was fantastic fun. It was great stuff, trying to balance it all. And it was amateur. Cricket, we got paid a little bit, but the rest was amateur. And you just tried to fit as much as you could in to every day and every afternoon, and practice, and your rugby one day, cricket the next. It was just the most magical growing up of my life. And I tried to keep them going as long as I possibly could. Got a few injuries, and things like work got in the way as well. But I had a fantastic time playing rugby and cricket for the best part of 7-10 years.
Well, I have to say, whilst your humility is appreciated, I'm not sure you are that bad. To be able to play for England in 2 different sports, I think is remarkable.
I didn't play England cricket. No, I was only a county cricketer. 10 years.
Well, in which case I don't even know why we're speaking to you.
Well,
but nevertheless, your humility is appreciated, but perhaps not warranted. And then, of course, you got into this TV lark a little bit like Kyle here.
Well, and the teaching, because Kyle's did a teacher training course as well. Yeah, exactly. I was going to be a teacher. I went into teaching. I managed to do one spell where I taught for 2 terms, played a bit of rugby, and then had the summer off to play county cricket, which was perfect. Not well paid, but perfect. And I did that for a while, and then the ankle injury started to get to me, and I thought I better be a serious, responsible parent and father and citizen. So I'm going to be a full-time teacher. So I taught full-time for 2 years at Sherborne in Dorset. And again, a series of lucky coincidences. The radio people were short of a guy to do some summarising. I was in the right place. They said, do you want to have a go? I found out that I could do it. They said, there's a bloke called Peter West, is going to retire pretty soon. Do you think you'd like to have a go at seeing if you can do rugby as well as that? I said, yeah, why not? Because I could always go back to teaching. And again, luck, coincidence, Peter West retiring, all those things happened. And I managed to carve out a career as a broadcaster. So it's been brilliant.
And I'd say you have just one of those most beautifully distinct voices that everybody would know the second they turned on the radio or the TV who was commentating. Unlike Kyle, who just sounds like a northerner.
Well, this is it, isn't it? Right. But no, just listening to a lot of the things Higgy was saying there, Paul. You know, a lot of what he's saying is reminiscent of where I'm at and what the kind of things I've done. You know, a lot of what he was saying is something that me and you spoke about last time, Paul, where I said that, you know, in any sort of career that's going to be deemed successful, you have to have that luck element straight away, don't you, Higgy? And what you have to work hard along the way, and you have to be surrounded by good people. And I've no doubt, Iggy, that you've been in and around some very good people who've helped you out as well along the way. But it's just a lot of the things you were saying, even the parts with the teaching and how broadcasting fell into your sort of hands or position, if you like. There's a lot of similar things, and it just made me laugh there when you were speaking, man. That was all.
Yeah, no, it's life is full of coincidences. You know, you can get an injury at the wrong time, or the selectors pick somebody else, and you go with it. I've had a lot of fun going with it and finding out where it's going to take me, and it's been brilliant. And you meet some amazing people along the way, your teammates, sometimes your coaches, not always, and the guys you work with. And the one thing that I suppose that I've really loved most all of this time is the team, being in a team. You're in a team at rugby, cricket, and you're in a team in broadcasting. You can't do it without the producers and the guys who are doing all of the stuff behind the scenes. You just can't manage it all on your own. So you do need to work with people and to get on with people. And that has been, a joy for me to be part of a team aiming for the same thing. It's just been a fantastic time.
So if we fast forward a wee bit to 2003 and a remarkable build-up by a remarkable England team. I remember them winning in New Zealand with 6 in the scrum and all of that. But of course they and they got a fair bit of stick from the Australian press in particular, didn't they, about the way that they were playing rugby. But we get to that final. You're sat there with your good mate Robbo.
Yeah.
Who I had the fortune to meet a couple of weeks ago, Kyle, actually, a genuinely wonderful man. And I also had to thank him I apologise, Mrs. Williamson, for the best day of my life when he commentated on that final. So what was it like? You were there. I mean, presumably there was a lot of nerves, there was a lot of anticipation and excitement. What was the sense in the box?
I mean, I'm lucky enough with Radio 5 Live to have been following England all the way through. So I'd been on tours with them before. I was in New Zealand and Australia the year before when they won those 2 matches away from home. I'd followed them and interviewed Clive Woodward and all of them, John O, and all of these people after most of their international matches. Been on tour with them at that World Cup. I was there for the full 7 weeks in the England camp, as it were. And yes, you felt the nerves with them. You felt the build-up, but you had this confidence because, you know, we'd beaten New Zealand and Australia the year before. We were playing well, few hiccups. Game didn't go so well at various times. It looked a bit laboured, but you still had that sort of confidence that they would work out a way of scoring. All those players that came through from different areas at different times, like Ben Cohen, nobody knew about him for 2 years before. Josh Lucy, people like Jason Robinson, they all turned up and fitted in the jigsaw. So you had a feeling that this is going to come. We're going to do it in the end. But you never overlook the Australians or the New Zealanders. But it got better, and we had that awful quarter-final against Wales.
Yeah.
Then the semi-final against France. Johnny came through for us. Then it was the final. And as you say, the Aussie press were brilliant because they spent the whole week beforehand saying, is this all you've got? You've got a kicker, you've got Johnny Wilkinson, a big bunch of, well, they called us the White Hawks on steroids. You've got all those big, ugly forwards. But we've got Matt Giteau and we've got Saylor and people like that on the wings, and Joe Roth, and we're going to, this is destiny. The Australians are going to win in the stadium in front of their own crowd. And that was their belief, and they belittled England for the whole week beforehand. And then the game came and England started well. I remember doing an interview with Australian radio at half-time. England were ahead, and I thought we had them on toast, to be honest. I thought. So I'm very confident, said, well, it's, I think Australia have shot the bolt. It's unlikely they'll catch England now. So, this is all going extremely well. Then, of course, they kept scoring and levelling the scores, and it edged 3 points this way, 3 points that way. And eventually Johnny kicked that drop goal in the last minute of injury time. And the joy, I mean, you may have heard the radio commentary.
Yeah.
Robbo's giving his fantastic 35 seconds to go. This is the one. Johnny drops for World Cup glory. It's up. It's over. He's done it. And all that sort of stuff. But screaming in the background was Rob Andrew, who was our supervisor. And he just went, yeah, this is his protege. Johnny Wilkinson, who'd signed for Newcastle, was kicking the goal at one England. And Rob just screamed his head off. And it makes a lovely commentary. But as far as I was concerned, it meant I had to get myself down onto the pitch side to do the interviews, the post-game interviews. And when you do them, it's always better when you're interviewing a winning team. I've interviewed Clive when things have gone wrong. But I was going down to the pitch side, and I had my scooter with me, my mobility scooter, and the pitch was covered in mud. And I thought, if I get stuck here on my mobility scooter in the mud, and I've got 2 microphones because they were worried that it would go wrong. So I carry 1 microphone, then a spare. I had a cassette recorder. I had a backpack on. I had headphones on, and it was raining. So I was dressed up with my coat and all this, looking like I'm sort of monster. And I thought, if I get stuck here now, 80,000 people are just going to have a laugh, aren't they? And I won't be able to do my job. And oh God. So I left the wheelchair, the mobility scooter at the side, and hobbled on with my sticks, as well as this backpack and all this sort of thing, to do these interviews. And they shoved us to one end of the pitch. Said, that's where you're going to do the media interviews. And you're waiting and you're seeing what's going on. I don't know if you remember the presentation of the medals. The Australian Prime Minister came on, and he was so disgusted. He just chucked them at the England team. So, yeah, have a bloody medal, mate. Yeah, he was trying to get it all done quickly. When you go, what about the sort of the gentle handshake and well done, my man? All this sort of like, get your bloody medal off you go. And then the players were brought to me to do interviews, and Johnny was great, and John O was good, and Ben Kay was good, and so on. And I'm thinking it's all going into breakfast radio 5 Live. It's all going. But every interview every game I'd ever done with Clive as manager, I'd always managed to talk to Clive at the end of the game. he's a great guy for the media, and he said, it's my duty to speak. So even when they lost, he'd come and talk, and we'd have a chat. And I've come to the end of all of these interviews, and the media guy comes up and says, "Everything okay?" I said, "Where's Clive?" And he went, "Oh, no." He said, "I forgot." He said, "He's gone into the dressing room. I mean, he'd be having a few beers by now and talking to the lads, and he never." So I said, big day for England, quite a big day for me as well. And, I had banked on this. I must have looked crestfallen enough for him to go something about it. He went in the dressing room and spoke to Clive, and Clive came out again, out of the dressing room, through the tunnel, up to do an interview with me, which says fantastic a lot about Clive and what a great professional he was, as well as a great coach, and prepared to put himself out after he thought he'd done all the interviews, to come out and talk to me and 5 Live. So that made it an even more special day. England win, you do a good job, the commentary's gone well, and you get the interviews at the end of it. And yes, we went off into town. It was nearly
I guess, Carl, you've sort of experienced some of that generosity of spirit with Sir Clive as well, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I got to with part of the Rugby League World Cup. I got to go down and interview him in his home, and his wife welcomed me in, cup of tea, and sat down with Clive, and we chatted for about 20 minutes before the cameras started rolling, and then even towards the end there, I thought, I've got an opportunity like no other really. I'm sat in Clive's living room. Why not ask him a few more bits in and around the media, in and around sort of rugby, both rugby league and union. And he was ace, he was really, really good. Gave me some little sort of helpful tips and nuggets. And then obviously, look, when I shot him an email a couple of months later, I wasn't really expecting a reply, if I'm totally honest. But then when I got one back, I was like, wow, what a guy, what a man. You'll know as well from being in his company, there's certain people who have an aura around them, don't they? And he's certainly one of them. And, I'm just so excited to be able to, put this event on and have a lot of people share the experiences like you've just been talking about there, Higgy. Sir Clive, obviously straight out of his mouth as well, just sharing everything around that infamous night 20 years ago. It's going to be a fantastic night, and a really, an afternoon. Sorry, and I just can't wait, mate. It should be great.
It'll be grand.
Now, Alastair, I understand that that might have been quite special. We've just won the World Cup. You've got to interview Sir Clive Woodward, the winning coach. You've got to interview Jono, the winning captain. You've got to interview Johnny, the goal kicker, who won us the World Cup ultimately. In all your time in Australia, though, I doubt very much that you ever rode an ostrich.
No, I have to say, that is something I'd never have had the opportunity or even the desire to do.
Kyle?
Yeah. Yes, I have. I was visiting my old man in South Africa, me and my brothers, and somehow we ended up at this ostrich farm or sanctuary or whatever it was. And you'd put a little bag over the ostrich's head, and then you'd whip it off, and off it'd go. And I think my brother lasted about 10 or 15 meters on it, but they're quite quick, those little buggers.
They are faster than human beings, but that's for sure.
Literally the funniest, weirdest story I've heard in a while. That one.
I know.
Well, I suppose I can give you an ostrich story. My grandfather went out to South Africa in the beginning of the 20th century, 1900 and something. He had TB and he had to go out for the climate, as it were. But he got involved in ostrich farming, and he speculated about ostrich. And in those days, the ostriches roamed wild in the desert, and you basically banked on trying to catch one and then flogging the feathers, because the feathers were high fashion accessories in Paris and London at that time. So if you could bag a few ostriches and get their feathers out and ship them back to Europe, then you're going to make some money. And we've got 1 or 2 letters about my grandfather sort of saying, I've taken a share in an egg. We're hoping that it's going to hatch. But the sad thing was that ostriches were farmed for their feathers. It's great. Just before the First World War, somebody invented artificial ostrich feathers, and the bottom dropped out of the ostrich market. And they let all of the birds that they'd had in captivity or under control, they just let them all out into the desert, because they said, if we can't have the feathers, what's the use of these bloody things? Which meat now is, I mean, it's a delicacy. You know, if they'd stayed behind and farmed them like cattle or something like that, yeah, well, I'd be a millionaire, wouldn't I? You know, my grandfather, well, like all Hignells, really failed to do anything business-wise in any sense at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't come to this event, imagine what you're missing out on, right? Not only are you missing out on all of Higgy's anecdotes from the World Cup, not only are you missing out on Sir Clive's predictions on who's going to win it this year, you're going to get a bunch of animal stories that nobody could even conceive as real in any way, shape, or form. All that, and a 4-course meal, and a champagne reception, and half a bottle of wine each, and just 250. I mean, Higgy already, I think, is worth the entrance fee alone.
Sure, yeah.
So on that, because I don't really want to do the event online right now, because otherwise no one will turn up, right? But what's what are you particularly looking forward to? Again, thank you for doing this, and you know, we're going to contribute to a charity very close to your heart personally, with MS. So we are absolutely going to sort of help try and help back. Is there something that you're particularly looking forward to on the day, other than catching up with your old mate and having a bit of a chat, I suspect?
Well, yeah, I mean, me and Clive go back an awful long way, and I could tell you one or two stories about him and me on the same training field, which don't cast me in any good light at all. But that's for another time. And commentary, he was a commentator in one of the games I did. Yeah, it's going to be great catching up with Clive. It's going to be great catching up with sporting folk. You know, one of the things that I've found now is that, you know, since I took medical retirement about a dozen years ago now, you know, I don't get to see so many games. I'm not in the sporting milieu, or in the, you know, the bunch of brothers, the journos, and bumping into the players, and all of the fun things that happen around sport. You know, I'm missing them a bit. So I'm hoping that I'll catch up with some of the current stories, some of the old stories. And of course, it's all about reliving the past as well as looking forward to the future. And that's the great thing about sport.
Absolutely. Higgy, for now, really good to see you. Really good to see you looking so well. And we will see you on the 31st of August.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Higgy.
Pleasure.